morning. Dr. Sailesh Rao, I probably met Dr. Sailesh Rao maybe a year ago, a little over a year ago, and was extremely impressed by how he would relate to us and other non-vegans and gently share the vegan way and his perspectives. And over time, I could not help but make a commitment to go vegan myself. My partner Melissa and I are on the transition and getting closer every day, and very, very inspired. And Sailesh has been very generous to commit his time to the Collective Intelligence Block Party currently on a 7-part series. This is part number 4, which the series is called Healing the Planet, or How Not to Go Extinct. And this 4th part is on the ecological. He's addressing it from myriad different dimensions. And so I could go on and on about Sailesh and my love for him and all that he stands for and the beautiful community he's leading, but I don't like long introductions, so I am going to pass it over to Sailesh. Please give a warm welcome to Sailesh, who's going to lead us on a beautiful conversation these next couple hours, focusing on the ecological. Welcome, Sailesh. Welcome, everyone. Sailesh, please take it away and lead us.
Thanks a lot, Jamin. It's a pleasure to be with you, as always. And these are interesting times. You know, we scheduled these 7 talks before this became a major issue. And so now even the summit that we were planning from March 25th through April 3rd, we are extending it to April 11th. And I'm inviting Jim Hansen, you know, a number of other experts to join the summit so we can get their perspective on what's going on. Ye Tao, by the way, agreed to join. And I've sent an invitation to Melissa because I want to talk to her about art. And finally, you know, all the interviewees are going to come together in a synthesis panel. So, which thanks to you, that's how collective intelligence happens, right? So we get a synthesis panel, and people can ask questions of the synthesis panel. I'm hosting it from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., so I don't want to be as ambitious as you. Go 24 hours because I'm past 60, so I don't have your energy. Anyway, yeah, so this series, I'm just redoing the series from last year, updating it so that it's more current. And just looking back and seeing what I said before and figuring out a better way to say it, a more improved way to say it. So anyway, here it goes. Let me share my presentation. So yes, so this is the Healing the Planet or How Not to Go Extinct series. And this is the 4th part, which is about the ecological aspects of the transformation. Now, I have to tell you that, you know, I'm a systems specialist. So a systems specialist is a jack of all trades and a master of one, usually. Not a master of none. Usually you come from some perspective in which you're a master, but you have to be a jack of all trades. So Donald Knuth, professor at Stanford University, had said, a systems specialist is someone who knows something about everything and everything about something. So I don't claim to be an ecological expert, but I'm just going to tell you my overview consideration as to why, you know, I am focusing on veganism as the primary foundation for this transformation. So yeah, so today is ecological, then next week it'll be spiritual, and then economy and personal. And I have to tell you that the next 3 presentations are going to be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., but I have a hard stop at 1 p.m. because that's when the Vegan World 2026 Summit is going to start at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Okay? But I intend to keep my commitment to make these presentations.
Thank you, Shaila.
And then go and interview the people that I'm interviewing. So one of the fundamental problems that we have been trying to address in the environment is biodiversity loss. This is literally the death of animals, other species. And the mosaic that you see here is of species that are on the endangered list today. Okay, and when we kill other animals, literally we are also killing ourselves. So the reaction to this pandemic that's forcing us to stay indoors is actually allowing room for the wild animals to come back, to flourish again. So nature in some sense is forcing us to act in a way that's for the benefit of the wild animals. So I think our children and our future generations will forgive us for what has happened because the animals will be back. So just as social distancing is important for addressing the pandemic, species distancing is of vital importance to address the possibility of future pandemics. Because pandemics, almost every known pandemic that we have in our history came from our interaction with animals. And those interactions were not very nice. We were trying to chop their heads off and a virus jumped from the animal to us. So it's time, just as we do social distancing between ourselves, it's time for us to do species distancing in which we start treating other species with respect and at a distance. So this is precisely what veganism is calling for, to treat other species with respect. And so I see what is happening now as the caterpillar being forced into a cocoon. So the caterpillar was consuming, and it got too big for the planet. And just as in nature, when the caterpillar gets too big for his skin, something happens to the caterpillar that makes him stop and either get into a chrysalis or build a cocoon around himself and then meditate for a week, hanging under a twig. And inside the caterpillar, all the cells dissolve and become imaginal cells. Okay? I think this is precisely what we are in the process of undergoing. We are becoming imaginal cells of the Homo sapiens species. And I think in the process, we are going to stop calling ourselves Homo sapiens, because that's pretty arrogant, and acquire humility and start becoming Homo ahimsa. I actually want to call us Holo ahimsa, so we'll become whole again as a non-violent species. Okay? So we are in this cocoon, and now we have to figure out how are we going to organize ourselves in the cocoon, because this social distancing seems very clear that it has to happen for an extended period of time. The lockdowns that are happening around the world are not temporary events, because this particular virus is so infectious and so lethal that by doing lockdowns and social distancing, we are just regulating the flow of patients to the hospital. Okay? Eventually, the same number of patients are going to go to the hospital over time. So it means that instead of happening over the next 6 months, it's going to happen over the next 6 years if we stretch it out by a factor of 12. Right? And if you have to do that, because our medical system, our healthcare system is stretched, then it gives us a lot of time to think about who we are as a species and what our relationship should be to other species. And I think species distancing is going to become of vital importance as we get to a vegan world. Now it opens up certain other questions. The Arctic ice melt is almost inevitable. It's happening. It's like Professor Anderson of Harvard said that the chance that there will be any permanent ice left in the Arctic after 2022 is essentially zero. So the only ice that will be left is the temporary ice that comes and goes. Okay? So that requires us to take action on what we should be doing to prevent this positive feedback loop from going out of control. And lifestyle change is at the core of this. Even if you look at all of the projections from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, business as usual would be catastrophic for us. Just switching to clean energy is not enough. Clean energy and geoshading is also not enough. And clean energy, geoshading plus BECCS, which is this crazy idea of growing forests, chopping them up and burning them up for energy on a regular basis. That is also not enough because those are the RCPs that they've shown. And they also said in 2018, 2019, that there is this do not cross line above which all bets are off, that nature can take over and start going into this positive feedback loop and the climate could run out of control. So the only option we have is a lifestyle change plus do all the other things, clean energy, geoshading, and ecosystems restoration, not BECCS, ecosystems restoration. So we have to fundamentally reduce our energy use so that we really don't need to grow forests and burn them for our consumption. Okay? So instead of BECCS, it'll be ecosystems restoration. And that is the blue line. And I think with that blue line, we can stay below this do not cross line and pull it back. Okay? That's the best case scenario that we can do. And it comes from taking advantage of the land use that's happening today. So today, this is from the IPCC from 2015. It shows that 46 million square kilometers is used for grazing our animals. See the green, this light green and this extensive grazing land and grazing land together comprise 46 million square kilometers out of the 130 million square kilometers, the total. Okay, so this was in 2015. I think the data came from 2010. It has gotten a little bit bigger since then because we have been chopping down forests, these unused forests, and turning them into grazing land. But anyway, the biomass from this is about 3.87 billion tons per year goes to feed our animals. And then from cropland is about 10% here, which is 13 million square kilometers. And from cropland, we are extracting 6.36 gigatons of biomass, of which 3.14 gigatons goes to feed our animals. So if you look at everything that goes to feed our animals, it's about 7.27 gigatons. And our animals are providing 0.26 gigatons of food and 0.14 gigatons of other substances. And this food then goes into this food processing block, okay, and then comes out as processed meat. Versus meat and dairy all put together. This is all animal matter put together. So that's 1.28 gigatons. So 1.52 gigatons of plant food and 0.26 gigatons of animal food results in 1.28 gigatons of total food that goes into the food block for human beings. And then in addition, we're eating 0.28 gigatons of food directly. So if you look at these biomass flows and see what exactly are we really eating, we're eating about 1.54 gigatons of food. And to do that, we're extracting 6.36 plus 3.87, okay? Tons of food. So if I simplify that and show you, we are taking 9.05 gigatons of food from the land, from 45% of the land area of the planet. Of that, 7.27 gigatons is going into feeding our animals. 1.52 gigatons is going into the industrial processing block, and 0.26 gigatons is going directly into our stomachs. The animals are providing 0.26 gigatons of food from the food they eat. So all of these numbers are normalized, meaning they're all dry matter biomass. So there is no, water weight has been taken out. We're just looking at the total weight, just the weight of the actual food. Okay, so 0.26 gigatons of food, that becomes 0.19 gigatons after the industrial processing. So which means, what are we really eating? We're eating 0.19 gigatons of animal food, and we are providing 7.27 gigatons of plant food to the animals to get that. That's almost a 40-to-1 reduction. Okay? This is why I say, if you look at the biomass, there's a 40-to-1 reduction going from input to what we get to eat. Okay? And the animals are also providing 0.14 gigatons of other substances, okay, which is skin, blood, bones, and other things. So this is why it's important for us to talk about veganism, not just a plant-based diet. Because if you're eating a plant-based diet and you're consuming animal-based products, other animal-based products, our corporations are perfectly capable of raising animals just for their skin, just for their blood and their bone, so whatever else that we are using, right? So nothing changes here. If nothing changes here, you're not making an impact in the environment. So the only way we make an impact on the environment is by going vegan, completely eliminating all animal products, okay? So then the 0.14 gigatons of animal matter and the 0.19 gigatons of animal food can be provided just by plants alone. And you can do that from just the croplands. So you don't have to take any grazing lands for this purpose. Okay? So that is the foundation of what we are talking about. So from the croplands alone, we should be able to supply all of our needs, because currently we're using half the cropland output for animals, 1/4 for fuel, and only about 1/4 for human beings. And on the 37% of the land area of the planet that is grazing land, we are taking 3.87 gigatons of food just for the animals. So that land then becomes available for us to regenerate forests. And currently, that land is storing just 2% of the land carbon. So I'll give you the breakdown of the numbers later. So you'll see that these numbers are a little bit different from what I showed you before, because these numbers came from 2019. So this is the latest numbers. So it used to be 35% in the previous IPCC report. Now it became 37%. And this used to be 10%, it became 12%. Okay. So we've added another 4% for our use. And where did that come from? It came from the wild animals. And that's why they're dying out. So now let me go into details on this and show you what we can do with that land. So if this land is returned back to the original forest, what we can show is that you can sequester an additional 265 gigatons of carbon on that land, on just 41% of that land. And I'll go into details as to how we came up with this. Okay? It was a very simple calculation that was done. It was just adding up numbers. There's nothing complicated about it. So the way we did it was we looked at the land use in the year 1800. And so this is historical data. There is a database called HIDE that comes from the Netherlands that has historical data on where the forests were. So this light green was forest. Light green was forest. You see there's forest here. And then there's this mixed or other. So this is mixed or other red. Pasture land is this purple. I mean, this, I don't know what color that is. Is that, it's not purple.
It looks kind of pinkish purple.
Yeah. Okay. This pink color is pasture land, and you hardly see much here, right? Because there weren't that many livestock grazing animals at that time. And the grazing animals were also using some of the mixed area. Okay, so we weren't even looking at that. We were looking at just pasture land and grassland, because that's where our animals are eating. So then we took this map and overlaid it with the satellite map of what is happening today. In fact, in the year 2014. And you will see a whole bunch of pasture land showed up. Okay? A whole bunch of pasture land and grassland. Grassland is decreased a bit, but pasture land is where you are actually growing things just for your cows. So this is land where typically we even burn down that new growth that the cows didn't eat. So we're raising tons of animals now, right? And so then we said, okay, wherever there's grassland and pasture land, if it used to be a forest in 1800, can we just put the forest back? We pretend that the forest came back. Okay? Put it back there, and then add up the numbers to see what is the sequestration of carbon on land now. When we do that. So that's the new map that I'm showing you now. This is land use in the year 20XX, which is after we have done this change. You still have a bunch of pasture land because this pasture land was not forest before. So only wherever it was forest, we put the forest back. And you see lots of dots where the forest came back. And then we added up the numbers. So the data was, okay, the total area of grasslands is 47.3 million square kilometers out of 130. It's about 37%. The carbon sequestration on that land today is 52.8 gigatons of carbon, which is out of the 2,500 gigatons total, which is only 2% of the total. Okay, so 37% of the land is only storing 2% of the carbon today. Okay, so then we said, how much of that land area of 47.3 can be reverted back to the forest that used to be there in 1800? Turned out to be just 19.6 million square kilometers. It's only about 41% of the total. Okay. Right now, on this 19.6 million square kilometers, we are only storing 27.5 gigatons of carbon. But if you just bring back the forest, magically, if you just put the forest there now, it would be storing 292.7 gigatons of carbon. So the difference between these two is 265.2. And that is the extra carbon sequestration that would happen if we return the original forest on the grazing land that we're using today. So then we calculated the density of carbon sequestration. So it's 13.6 kilograms of carbon per square meter, and compared it to what has been measured in actual reforestation experiments. So over 20 years, Silver and his colleagues measured how much carbon was sequestered on land in which forests were allowed to come back, and they came up with 12 point something, right? So it is in line with what we are measuring. In fact, it's showing that we could probably get this reforestation bonanza of carbon sequestration within the first 20 years, most of it. So there's a paper we presented to the AGU about this, and everyone said, yeah, you're right, this makes sense, but it'll never happen. And why won't it happen? Because the world will never go vegan. So that is their argument. But the world will never go. We will never stop eating our animals. I mean, we have to show people, we have to tell people that there is this potential and then let people make the decision. It's not that, we who know are never going to present this data to anyone. In fact, this 52.8 gigatons is not there in the IPCC's report at all. I had to find out by doing this work with Professor Jain and his student. Only then I found out that for 37% of the land is storing 2% of the carbon. Because if not, that number was there in the IPCC report, people would have pointed it out a long time ago. And the other argument that's used against this reforestation is that, we have messed up the soil everywhere. So really, there's nothing you can do. We have messed it up so badly. Now we need to raise cows to bring the soil back. Okay? That's the argument that's used. So you see very degraded soil. So most of the planet's surface area is degraded or very degraded soil. So very little place where there's stable soil, where there are forests, or without vegetation. That's desert. Okay? But there is a way out. And that was shown in the Unifying Fields study that was done last year. So the study showed, look, yeah, we have degraded land. So there's a lot more degraded land now, okay? And it's going down. Stable soil is going down. And so this is what was projected. This is what it is in 2017. We're going to keep doing this. So 2040 will be like this. In 2050 will be like that. So it's all the way down to zero, right? That's the projection that UN comes up with. Because the UN assumes that we will never go vegan. There's never be a vegan world. So what Unifying Fields did was to say, what if instead of growing all this animals and things like that, what if we start bringing back food forests on that land? When you bring back food forests on that land, it starts going up. Okay, so regeneration of lands can save humanity from extinction because it gives us food, it gives a place for animals to live, and simultaneously, we're not really, even croplands can disappear over time because we can replace croplands with food forests. So biodiverse food forests. And the food forests have all these layers. Okay, you have layers where there's food grown under the soil, there's herbs, and then surface shrubs, and ground cover shrubs, then low trees and high trees. So you have this complete hierarchy, layering of vegetation, which is each part of it is giving us food. And it's also sequestering carbon. Okay? So creating completely edible forests so that agriculture becomes increasingly unnecessary. You really don't have to do agriculture anymore. We are returning back to being gatherers. And maybe you can gather with robots, who knows? But we'll become gatherers, right? And when we do that, we start restoring the climate of the earth. Okay? Because literally our forests are water pumps. So they create their own rainfall. So they change the rainfall pattern. As you bring back the forest, they start changing the rainfall pattern and they start changing the weather. So by choosing where to bring our forests back, we can actually start a process by which we grow the forest from the coast inward. And when you do that, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, the inland, I cannot bring back the forest because the soil is degraded. Therefore, I have to grow cows. No, you don't have to grow cows. Start from the coast and work your way in. And you will see that the soil will get better and better. So let nature heal. Okay? Allow nature to heal. So they've identified these zones where you can bring back the forest and create biotic moisture pumps. And then as the weather changes, then you'll get more and more rain inland. And as you get more rain inland, it's easier to bring back the forest inland. So you don't have to try and get forests to come back where there's no rain because because we progressively messed it up. So we have to progressively regenerate back. So this is the recommendation as to how we do these biotic moisture pumps in these coastal areas, and then bring back the forest and then start going inward. And not try to bring back the forest in the middle and then say, oh my God, I have to grow cows. Okay, so this is a better way of dealing with this from a systems perspective. And it turns out that more places, like in the previous one I showed you, the west coast of India, it's pretty easy to bring back the biotic moisture pumps. And we have seen examples of that. So in the west coast of India is where I took this picture. In 2002, we put a fence up and prevented animals from going in there. And by 2006, it became that. Because the rainfall is still there. Okay, so the seeds are still there in the soil, and the soil starts regenerating on its own. So we are part of the greatest transformation in human history. And we have passed the caterpillar stage and we're into the cocoon right now. So which is now making us think about, okay, how are we going to do an economy in the cocoon? What kind of economy are we going to do when we get out of the cocoon and become butterflies when we come out? Because there is no going back to the caterpillar. And thank you very much. This is it. We are done with the caterpillar. So we are going from normalized violence to normalized non-violence. We're not going to go back to the old system that was leading us to extinction. We're going to transform and thrive. And from a predator species, we're going to become a caretaker species. And I think we deserve a new name. From Homo sapiens, I suggest we call ourselves Holo Ahimsa. Holo means whole, because we are not just a primate. We are part of the whole. We are becoming whole again. And Ahimsa is non-violence. So instead of calling ourselves wise, let's call ourselves non-violent. And that's a combination of a Latin word and a Sanskrit word, which also means us coming together as a species across the globe. And so these are the individual 7 core shifts, from speciesism, colonialism, racism, ableism, patriarchy, to veganism and radical equality, from diseases and divisions for humanity to health and unity for humanity, from destruction and pollution of the earth to remediation and regeneration of the earth, from death and cruelty to animals to love and kindness for animals, from a culture of consumption to a culture of compassion. And now we are beginning to see how much we were consuming. There's so much that we don't have to do anymore. These essential services are the only ones that are open. So then you see all these non-essential things. People are not going to malls anymore. So we really never needed malls. From a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance, and from a money-driven economy to a service-driven economy. And I think we are going to create our own currency in this cocoon called Aquarius. And we are working on that. And that's one of the interviews that I'm going to be doing during the summit, starting March 25th. So please, I'm going to send Jamin details on the summit, and he can send it to his mailing list so everyone will know what is happening. And please join that summit. Actually, it's an interview format so that I elicit things from the experts that I'm talking to. And then we will have a synthesis Zoom meeting from 8 to 5 on April 18th, where I invite all the interviewees from this summit and from the previous summit that happened in October, which means Jamin, you are also invited. So join that, and then let's thrash this out. Okay, and following that, we will have a detailed conferences every week on different topics. So with experts coming in and talking to us, doing a deep dive into their subject matter. And after that, I'm going to be requesting the experts to write a guide for us so that we have something to start with. But how do we work? How do we live in the cocoon? How do we live when we get out of the cocoon?
Love it, Silas.
Yeah. So as Buckminster Fuller said, you don't have to go teach people a new way of thinking. You have to give them a tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking. And that's the idea behind Aquarius. So when you have a new currency system like Aquarius, in which universal basic income is built in, you don't have to worry about, I have to go do my job, otherwise I can't eat. It's unacceptable that we have a system like that, right? Especially when people are getting sick. So we have to find a way to deal with who we are in the cocoon. And the vegan movement is at the core of this, and it's driven by women. So because this is the masculine turning into the feminine. That's the cocoon. And so almost 3/4, I think more than 3/4 of vegans are female. Okay, so the rest are male. So it's a women-led movement, and it is led by young people. So almost half of vegans are below the age of 30. And 30 to 45, 45 to 60, and I unfortunately fall in this category. So I need to help my generation to get with it. So, and we're going to do it, okay? We're going to do it because everything is pointing to this as a necessity. If you look at the risk factors for COVID-19 mortality, it's diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, cancer. I mean, all of those things can be addressed and even reversed with a whole foods vegan diet. So if we are talking about reducing the burden on our hospitals, we should be giving free vegan food to everybody so that they can reverse their diseases. Okay, and that should be the role of the local government. So in fact, I'm happy to announce to you that the vice mayor of Tempe is going to join us on the interview summit. So, because I think this is where decisions are going to be made at the local level. So then, of course, the detailed ecological shifts. We have to go from monocultures to biodiversity, food forests, from climate destruction to climate healing, from ecological overshoot to ecological thrivability, which is measured through the Aquarius currency, from artificial scarcity to natural abundance, because we started out with natural abundance and we created an artificial scarcity out of it by feeding most of the food to animals. So we don't have to do that anymore. From a death-dealing culture to a life-enriching culture. That's what the shift is going to be. Because we have lots of questions about it, and we have been trying to answer them, but we really need experts to come together and help us with creating a base, and then all of us can participate in making sure that they are meeting the 7 core shifts and so on, right? And that what they're saying is compatible with what other experts are saying. So that is our role as lay people. And I think we really need experts to come and join us to help answer these questions. And you can see that most of these questions are relevant for making this shift in the cocoon. So, of course, we did some initial work. And here are the new model questions as to what it's going to look like when we get out of this cocoon and become butterflies. And here are the questions for that. How are we going to rehabilitate land? How do we do organic permaculture worldwide, etc.? So many questions that we have. And clearly we need a lot of people working on this. It cannot be just a few of us talking to each other. And a lot of experts have to come in with their inputs. So that's what I'm trying to do with the summit and with the interviews and the conferences that happen afterwards, trying to get more expert participation in this work so that we can come up with guides that are useful for people. So thank you very much. As always, everything we do on Climate Healers is open source. So the books are open source. All the papers that I write are open source. And I welcome your input and your comments and your questions anytime. So I'll stop sharing. Well, I'll stop sharing if I can.
If not, I'll help you out, Silas. Here, I will. There we go. I've stopped it.
Okay.
We can all see each other again. What a beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome.
Thank you.
As always.
Thank you. My goodness. And what a wonderful group we have here today. Silas, I want to just take a moment and congratulate you on two things. Number one, your application of collective intelligence to all the work you're doing with the upcoming summits and everything, really inspiring. And I'm inspired, in fact, that we now begin to put together a map and kind of a universal calendar of all these conversations, whether it's Radish sponsoring a conversation, Vegan World 2026, Kiko Lab. I mean, there's so many different groups that are coming together. It's like the lily pads are finally getting big enough that they're touching. So let's create a whole bridge out of it. Secondly, I just wanted to mention briefly, since we're talking, a lot of today is dedicated to strategy. We're talking about strategy. I just wanted to briefly mention kind of a strategy that we're cooking up here, which is 3-phase. Phase 1, come together, which is what we're doing right here. You know, birth the collective super intelligence and exponentiate it, because we need to become exponentially smarter very quickly if we're going to get through this bottleneck. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is centered around the coronavirus, ending world hunger, and veganism. And the big idea is bring nutritious vegan food to everyone, home delivery, so they can stay home, not get the coronavirus, be well nourished, and go vegan. Boom, there's inside the cocoon this phase transition to veganism and to compassion and taking care of everyone. And then phase 3, cool the planet with solar radiation management and all the other healing techniques that you mentioned, Silas. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that real quick. I don't want to hog the microphone. And for those of you who are here for the first time, please jump in the conversation. You will find Silas a wonderful leader and host of the conversation. So just jump in with questions, comments, challenges, anything you want. So with that,
yeah,
I'll go on mute. Yeah, go ahead, sweetie.
Thank you, Silas. That was really awesome to hear all of your work, about your work and the work of others joining you. Really inspiring. And some of the thoughts that have been coming to me about what the coronavirus has actually helped us with for this cocooning shutdown is, I was wondering, like, there's talk in our area of how long grocery stores will stay open, which means no more access to meat, no more access to fish. And there's only so much people can store in their freezers, right? So, like if you go to Costco now or any of the big stores or even local stores, what is gone from the shelves? Pasta, spaghetti, quinoa, rice, you know, things people can have over a long period of time of having to stay home. So in an odd way, it seems like that's the way we're headed anyway, you know, because that's what we can store. So that was one thing I was thinking about. The other thing that I'm seeing is a lot of activity in countries like Australia. So I'm on Instagram and I keep getting this one site that says, buy one of these bracelets to fund our tree planting program. So they are in the process of planting millions of trees after those bushfires. So it seems like there are these activities happening now, which are a direct result of tragedy or loss or some kind of restriction, which is, I find, a really beautiful and positive thing coming out of beyond our control. The other thing I want to mention is resistance, which I find really fascinating. So one of the things I'm working on is online art classes for children, but not business as usual art classes. They're let's tell stories about Mother Earth. We're going to talk about how to use things that you can find in your garden or in your home, taking care of your materials, upcycling. You know, you're not going to just get your pretty box of paints anymore from Amazon. You might have to use some old paint box that I have that I'm going to lend you. You know, so this whole other consciousness around production, what is being a creative maker mean now, and how do we do things differently? So what I'm finding really interesting is that within the organizations that I've worked with in the past, and I'm not going to name them, there is a resistance to this. I just got an email today saying something, I can actually read it because I just got it. And I thought, wow, how synchronistic that you're talking about this. And I got this email. It says, okay, we're down with you doing your online classes, but we would not want to move towards off-site classes once this is over. Isn't that interesting? Like, well, are they expecting it to be finished in four weeks? Because I don't think so, you know. So I just thought that was really interesting, this kind of lack of vision, not to judge or anything, but that there is this resistance to this change in some area, in some places.
Right. Yeah, you know, I mean, people are hoping that the caterpillar will come back, but I don't think so. I mean, the odds are not this time, because it is such a combination of lethality and infectiousness in this particular virus that knowing that we are not going to get, even in the best case, we're not going to get a vaccine to use for 12 to 18 months. You have to stretch it out. And if we let it go without doing anything, without business as usual, it'll be a disaster for the planet. There'll be, you know, not just 3%, maybe 6% mortality we are looking at. Because if you look at what's happening in Italy, it's 6% mortality there. And that's a lot of unnecessary deaths that we should be trying to avoid, right? You're talking about 200 million to something like 300, 400 million people if we just let it go. So we have to control it with our behavior. And so when we do this kind of social distancing, we are just stretching it out and trying to lower the mortality rate. So we are stretching it out. The infections are going to happen, but we are lowering the mortality rate because there are more doctors available. Doctors have time to take care of you. There are hospital beds available. There are ventilators available. So we can take care of people who have acute symptoms. And that's a huge number of people that we can save. And in addition, if we can get people to give them good food so that they can reverse their diabetes, reverse their heart disease, and bring down the mortality rate again through that. So that's going to again stretch it out. So that's I think the compassionate thing to do now. That's what we should all be trying for. So, and that to me is a completely different society than a society that's looking to make money off illnesses, which is what we have created so far. So it'll become a society, I mean, even in the cocoon, it has to become a society in which universal healthcare is built in. You know, food is literally free, just like what Damon was saying. We need to give it away so that people eat the good food. And universal shelter should be available. So basic shelter, basic food, and basic healthcare should be taken care of for everybody. And then we should have a list of things that need to get done, because there are a lot of things that we need volunteers for. You know, and it's a risky thing too, because volunteers are going to get infected. So you cannot force people to do this. So you have to tell them, look, these are the things we need. We need more nurses. We need more, emergency technicians, and we need more food preparers, food delivery, and then ask for people to volunteer that they could come and join. And I'm sure people are going to come together to do that. I'm already seeing that. I'm part of Nextdoor, network called Nextdoor, which is focused on local networks. And I see my neighbor saying, hey, I don't have this, I don't find them in the store anymore. And someone else says, I have extra, I'll give it to you. So you see community being built already, because we are all in this together. And it's worldwide. So that's the beauty of this. This is connecting us worldwide.
Governor Inslee, who's the governor here in the Seattle, King County area, and he has declared that people cannot evict anyone for non-payment of rent. So we're starting to see a lot of things like that happening, a lot of landlords suspending, demanding rent, etc.
Right. See, but then again, maybe the landlord depends on that rent for their existence. So, so then there'll be hardship for the landlords too. Right? Because some landlords are like that, let's say. So it becomes a rethinking of the entire system. So why is the government telling the landlord, hey, you take a cut, right? So you need to have a different, I really think that there should be a currency it should be a COVID currency, right? That we can honor ourselves and use it to buy certain essential things or buy certain things. Maybe essential things should be free, but certain things that you can get. Right? So because people are growing the food, they need to be paid, they need to eat, they need to get other things. So there is a chain reaction that's happening now that's bringing into question the entire model of economics. So one of the interviewees, I'm trying to get her to come, she wrote a book on feminist economics. Okay, so this is economics in the feminine. What does that look like? Where it's all about caring.
All right, beautiful. Jorge has his hand raised. Go for it, Jorge. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Jamin. Hello, Dr. Rao. I am going to read something that I found on the Veganic Permaculture Study Group back when I joined the base camp of the Vegan World 2026 project. And there's so many shift questions and new model questions. And this is a shift question, it's number 16. How do we get every human being to actively put their hands in the dirt and heal the earth with veganic permaculture, creating abundant forest gardens, etc.? And I remember back then putting into the campfire my own question, like, how many vegans are modeling this?
Right.
And the question still lingers there 3 months later.
Right.
So I'm wondering who is going to be in charge and who is going to model this as something appealing to do, not just like theorize about it, but also put it into action, because we need a plan and we need to strategize around it and go directly to it, and it needs to be done within 6 years. So right. If you plant the food forest right now, it will only come to a fruition stage in 6 years. So that's 2026. And right now, Sylvia and I are forming a team to work on this after becoming more than experts. Like, experts are people that have been given authority, but this is direct experience
right.
that we have. So I know that in your charts, you show that women and young people are in the front lines, let's call it, though this is not a war, of the vegan movement, let's call it. So if this is the majority, do you think that this is the people that are going to go and become food forest growers, farmers, right, whatever you want to call it? And how is that going to happen?
Right. Good question, Jorge. I would say that now that we are all in lockdown, people are looking for things to do in their backyard. Okay. And I would suggest that if you host classes, regular classes, show them, something, what is the next thing you can do? Here is something you can do. and talk about some aspect of your experience, because you have so much to share. And if you host these Zoom classes, I bet you that people are going to start listening to you, and you can repeat them. Repeat the classes once every 6 months, something like that. You will see that your students are going to come and they're going to start implementing what you are talking about, and then you can even show them. So you may not be able to harvest the fruits in 6 years, but you can certainly harvest your kale, in 3 months. So you will have, I see my granddaughter doing that in her classes, right? Because they go and plant these kale, carrots, and things like that. And they're so happy when the first leaf shoots out, and then they are harvesting it and they want to put it in their soup and eat it. So I think it's a great idea to have these online classes, because we are stuck using this medium to communicate with each other. And so this way we can share our expertise around the world. So you could have something on food forests, someone could have something from food forests in Mexico, and someone could have something about food forests from Australia, or India, wherever. So you have all these options open to us.
Okay, thank you. Like that idea of the Zoom calls, I see everybody going into that right now, no? Like everyone to have like collective intelligence in every topic. But our experience is that it is funny when you present yourself as a vegan, right? Mm-hmm. That people say, oh no, you can't live off of salad. No, you can't do it. Like, it's too much for me. And what I just heard from your response, and also from people that are not vegan, that are into permaculture, and also from other vegan organizations, is that they're teaching people how to grow salads. And that won't feed us.
No. It has to be a food forest. Yeah,
we need to connect what you said about the biotic pumps. And if you see that in the map, you will see that that's really out of the comfort zone of people. So, and usually there won't be any coronavirus to run away from in those areas, but there will be deadly spiders, deadly snakes, and wildlife that are looking to feed themselves. And if it's not a wild boar or a monkey, they will see you making a food forest. So this needs to happen within 6 years. Yes, the background idea, the backyard idea, it's one small percentage of it, and I appreciate that input. But my question is, like, who is willing really to dedicate their lives within the vegan movement to go for it? Because it's a very, very important task, and I feel that it's not really in front of us all the time, and we get distracted by, if not the coronavirus, the human dramas, and we waste so much time. And for example, Sylvia and I have been knocking on doors, and our experience is that there are more people that are not vegan contributing to food forests, and we're not talking to them. And one of the links I see is the Holo Ahimsa, that uses also the holistic, right? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate very much what Jamin put together and his team of Radish, of having you, Dr. Rao, with Mr. Alan Savory. And I feel that opportunity is gold. Is gold. Like, they are, like, his crew are hands-on this. They're building food forests.
Well,
with animals, I know, and I don't like that part.
Right.
But we need these bridges, because I see that they are already doing the work that we want to do, but haven't started in the scale that they're doing.
I don't agree with you on that statement, because there are vegans who have been working on food forests throughout the world. Okay, it's called veganic permaculture. You know that, veganic permaculture. And they are the ones that we are going to be supporting through our Aquarius app, the app that we are working on. Sadhana Forest is now in India, it's in Kenya, it's in Haiti, and the founders have so many volunteers who come, who may not come as vegans, but they become vegans when they join because they have no choice. Because Sadhana Forest is trying to close the loop. And if you want to close the loop, your waste has to be usable as fertilizer. So that has to become vegan. So they become vegan. And so there are so many young people who have volunteered. So maybe you can have a program by which people test negative for coronavirus and they go to Sadhana Forest. Who knows? We'll figure out a way to support them. And they have said that they're willing, expand the Sadhana Forest as much as we want. And he knows places where he wants to grow them. He's just looking for resources. Okay? He has a complete map as to what he wants to do. So I think it's about strengthening us as a community and helping us flourish and inviting those who are not vegan to just stop the exploitation of animals. That's where the virus came from. So why are we going to that same well again and again? We know it's poisoned. So do we want the next virus to jump in one of those? No, we have to keep a respectful distance with other species. And they model that in Sadhana Forest. Yeah, there are animals, there are insects there, but they have figured out how to live among them.
I just wanted to come back to Jorge's question, if I understood it correctly, Jorge, about, what's the step? How do we get people to get involved in planting these food forests? And it seems to me like you have to make a decision for yourself about, do you want to be an educator or do you want to plant the garden yourself? Because I think we need educators who will work with everybody to help us learn about how to forage. What can we find around us in whatever natural environment we find ourselves, whether it's desert or the Northwest or somewhere else? Or because one of the things I've been wondering is, well, how do we get hold of seeds now? How do we get hold of little starter plants to grow our vegetables if everything is shut down? So I think we're going to need educators to work with all age groups. Now that we have time, what do we do? Where do we begin? And I would sign up for that class. I'm sure many other people would. So I think there's got to be, the educators who are going to help at ground zero level about what you can do in your own backyard. And then I think there's this other level of operation, which is more communal and bigger scale, which is planting the food forest, which maybe are going to provide for people. Maybe it's not going to be everyone involved in that, but they will become forests that provide and are role modeling for future ways of eating and being on this planet. So it would just seem to me that you have to, get clear about that yourself. Like what do you want your role to be? So just wanted to say that.
I have so much to ask, but I want to hear other voices, because I believe that, yes, I can choose to be an educator or to be a doer, but I wear so many hats in my life. I can switch them in a heartbeat. So I know that there's this potential in every human being. We don't need to choose from being leaders or followers. We are both, and we can do this like even in the same minute. I've learned this from children. Children can do whatever they want and create whatever they want. In a minute, they can be a captain, they can be a doctor, they can be a farmer, and we can do the same because we were children once. So please, let me hear the voices of everyone. Like there's so many windows.
Yeah, I mean, I have had 10 years of education from my granddaughter, so 9.5 years so far. And I can tell you, yes, they have a lot to teach us. Now is the time for us to be open and to listen. And it's so interesting that this virus doesn't affect them. They don't get too sick. So I'm convinced that nature is playing a game with us, and she knows exactly what she's doing. She's putting us in the cocoon.
All right, I want to second what Jorge suggested, which is for everyone to share. I'm happy to play the moderating role and keep track of the queue and all that. So if you'd like to share, please raise your hand. No one is in the queue at the moment, so please jump in. And then if someone's talking, just raise your hand, and I'll get you in the queue if that's okay with you, Silas. I'm happy to play. I'm happy to play that role so you can focus on the conversation. All right, so please jump in if you have questions or comments.
You can also raise your hands through the participants list right on Zoom.
That's right. You can raise your hand electronically, or if you don't know how to do that, just feel free to wave. But yeah, if you click on participants, there's a way to raise your hand there.
Yeah, there's a list of buttons. Raise your hand, yes, no, go slower, go faster, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Lynn, please.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here and to experience this for the first time. I'm just, is it working? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we're just being enthusiastic. We can
okay. My name is Lynn, and so my husband and I, we have a sanctuary and we rescue farm animals. So one of the things that we are doing here, we're just a micro sanctuary, and what we're trying to do is educate people. Unfortunately, we've had this situation with the coronavirus come up, and we have had to stop everything for the moment. But we're talking about doing videos with Salesh, and having something with Suzanne has been helping us. So I've just got to meet her, and Amy Millardi is the one who helped introduce us to all of this. And so hopefully maybe she could chime in as well. But we're just getting on board. And I think if we educate about veganism, I think that is the way to go. I think also as consumers, we have to tell companies that, this is what we want. We want to have this on the shelves, but we have to buy it, right? And we have to get, so in the education part, we can help people to say, this is what we need to move to. And so that's just my thought on it, because I do think it's going to be really hard. I've had gardens myself, and we have property, and we're going to go buy berry bushes tomorrow, but it is very hard to grow lots of crops unless you know what you're doing.
Right.
So, anyway, that's all I just wanted to add to the conversation. And I guess, Salesh, I just wanted to ask you, do you think that just small areas of food, I think that would help, even if you were not taking up so much of the earth, that you just had your own gardens, if you can do it. And of course, we live in the Northeast, so it's going to be difficult. You just do it during the summertime, so you have a couple of months to work with that. But I think if we are educated on how to, maintain, even if it is just salads and berries and, apple trees or something, I think it would change the world, in that it's like a small step, but it's huge in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. The amount of built land is about 2%. So how much we take for ourselves, for urban areas, it's about 2% of the total amount of land. It's about 20% of the cropland. So in essence, we could get maybe 20% of our food from there if we are productive, right?
Right.
But, I think, but even in cold climates, we now know how to put greenhouses up and grow year round. So that's also something that's open to us that wasn't there before, right?
Right, right. And thank you for sharing all that information. I have to say that was a lot of data for me. I am happy that you are sharing it online and that we can go and look back at it as well.
Right.
But thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm an engineer, so I work with data a lot. So, and it comes through, I guess, in the way I analyze things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, because that's way over my ability. Thank you.
And that's collective intelligence for you. We each come with our own gifts for
Right.
for the vegan stone soup. Beautiful. Great sharing. More sharing. Yes, Jorge.
I just remember in the open learning day that we had, I think it was in January, if I don't remember correctly, in the veganic permaculture study group. And Greg Lirus was part of it. I don't know, Lynn, if you have heard about Greg Lirus. He was in
Right.
one of the documentaries that Dr. Rao produced called Cowspiracy at the very end, which if you ask people if they ever saw veganic permaculture or something like that mentioned in Cowspiracy, most people won't say where, when, but it is in the last 10 minutes.
Okay.
So Greg was interviewed there, and he was also part of one of the biggest animal sanctuaries in California. So he has a very, I don't know if like a trauma, I would call it, not his words, out of those experiences. Because as vegans, we feel compelled to rescue animals that are being exploited. But once you are really strategizing what you're doing with your sanctuary, there are so many flaws in how they're being implemented. And one of them is that the carrying capacity of the land used as a sanctuary is not calculated. So I see these sanctuaries popping up everywhere. And the business model is finding people to donate for the feed of these rescued animals. So if you see it from the side of they're basically refugees, like you're trying to save their lives, yes, like put them in your closet, right? Like anywhere that they don't have to be killed. But if you see it in is this sustainable? Like, can we do this for all the animals? And maybe not for all of them, but for, let's say, 73 cows, no? Does your land have this capacity to carry these 73 very heavy eaters? So yeah, like it is important to see that, because we need to calculate how much for human population food production we need. And if we want to have sanctuaries, we have to have the same strict analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to talk with Greg, like I guess you will have like a very in-depth knowledge. I also see the Rowdy Cowgirl. She's doing a lot of this work, and she's really good at it. Yeah. Right. So good luck with that, and much success.
Thank you.
All right, great sharing. Miles, welcome back. And I see you got your hand raised. Take it away.
Hey, everybody. So I'm up here in Canada on the traditional territory of the Niitsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy. And one of the things that they, and generally speaking, First Nations have appreciated, but we never listened to, is that the divine feminine recognizes when there's misconduct. And that is where we men have to embrace the First Nations wisdom that is part of probably the territory you're on, and say, yes, that our governance needs to change. And then incorporate that wisdom of the feminine the Haudenosaunee of the Iroquois, actually were approached by Benjamin Franklin and Chief, I think his English name was Keswick or something like that. Sorry, but anyway, he said, well, you know, your Constitution's all very well and good, but where are the women? So let's look back at that history. One of the things I want to mention here is just yesterday I'm driving with my son to go get his tuba because the school's locked down, as probably many of your schools are as well. And they were given certain windows to come by and get their school supplies and such. And on the way there was an ad by the dairymen's or dairy industry of, I don't know whether Alberta or Canada. And they're, you know, sort of a public service type general announcement about, oh, the dairy industry, we're here to provide you nutritious food. And they conclude by saying, and we respect the land. But it jumped out at me, you know, they didn't say we respect the animals. I thought that was a significant omission, but, you know, if they did say we respect the animals, they would probably find themselves really being ridiculed for spreading falsehoods. So they're on the ropes, obviously. And Dr. Rao, you know, our stock markets have taken a hit. And I'm thinking it is perhaps time to really push the message that the smart money is going to move into veganism, into a plant-based economy, and into creating these forests that we're talking about. And I've read, I think it was actually Melissa presented this book some time ago, Act of Hope by Joanna Macy and Chris Johnstone. And in this book, she talks about two kinds of power. There's power over and there's power with. And it occurs to me that what we've had for the past couple hundred years anyway is power over capitalism. What we need to do is say it's time for power with capitalism. Now, some people may say, well, you know, Miles, you're just promoting capitalism now. That's the old paradigm. Well, the word capitalism just actually means to count. Head count, you know, livestock and stock markets are all connected to the original industrial animal agriculture or origins. So if we just think of capitalism and we say, hey, we're capitalists too, but we are all about power with capitalism, a capitalism that recognizes that we have to share our power with our animal relatives, all our relations. And by promoting that, people may say, maybe I better shift my savings and I think you guys call it the 401ks, into this new economy. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the stock market is basically an indicator of what people think about the future. Is this going to continue to grow or is this going to shrink, right? And so it's an indicator of the caterpillar. Is the caterpillar going to grow or not? And I think people still think that maybe we can get out of this and the caterpillar will grow again, which is why the stock market is still not yet zero. Right? I think the realization is that there is no foreseeable end to this in the near future. Because if we try to make it end in the near future, we're going to have a lot of people dying, and we don't want to do that. So we have to value life over property. And that's what we are being called to do now. I wish we had done this with the animals because we valued property over them. We treated them as property. And wild animals, we kept killing them as if they didn't matter. Now we are being in a way, forced to give space back to them. And so this is, I think this is Mother Nature telling us, you're done with the caterpillar phase and you now have to go into the cocoon and wait until you figure out who you really are. And we are doing that. We will become who we really are, which is a caretaker species. And we'll come out of that and we'll figure out what the system would be that we need to do. I really think it should be, I mean, we need to measure our impact on the planet, but we need to measure honestly. So what you measure correctly, you can manage accurately. Right? But if your costs and all are completely bogus based on supply, demand, or whatever, that have nothing to do with the planet that it's on, then we are going to manage poorly, which is what we have done so far. Because the costs that we were using were not based on the actual cost to the earth. It is based on how much supply is there, how much demand is there. So, which literally forces us to create scarcities. Because that's only when something is scarce, is there any value in the current system. Okay? When you base it on supply demand. So it's a different kind of economics we have to come up with. So this is why I want to talk to this author of, I think it's Laura Nelson is the name, of the book Feminist Economics, which looks at, from a very feminine perspective of economics, as opposed to counting heads. Because when you're counting heads, then you're saying, okay, I want more heads. So that's more is good, right? More is better. And I get more heads when someone else, I can take it from someone else. So that's where war comes from. All this violence comes from that, when we measure that way. But when we measure based on our impact on the planet, then the cost is independent. There is no, what you're trying to do is to minimize your impact. So that's how you reduce the cost. Okay, which is a good thing for the planet. And we need to have accurate feedback. So I know that in any engineering project, if you want to make sure that what you built matches what you said you're going to build, you have to have an accurate way of measuring what you're building, and then you have to have a way of matching it against what you said you're going to build. So you have to have that feedback. And in any engineering project, it has to be based on the truth. Otherwise, you'll never build anything that matches what you said you're going to build. Right? Engineers don't have the luxury of pretending. So in that sense, I think we are sort of a special breed of scientists who cannot pretend, who have to follow the truth, follow nature. Nature is the truth. Because all science is based on measuring against nature. That's the scientific method. It's about understanding nature.
I agree with most of what you said, Dr. Rao. There's something that doesn't click to me about, and maybe this is related to the sensitivity analysis that you presented last Friday, because one of the arguments of veganism is like, oh, we will switch the demand and the offer will also transform, right? So instead of buying a cow's burger, we will buy a Beyond Meat burger. And if 7.5 billion people does the same as I'm doing, then everything will change. So that is, for me, making stronger the capitalist paradigm, and also the consumer existence of human as that's all there is, no? Being consumers. And in your sensitivity analysis, am I saying it there right? It's called sensitivity analysis. Okay, there you mentioned something that I think it connects to what we're talking right now. Like if we turn the world vegan because of the Vegan World 2026 actions or in conjunction with other efforts, is that going to be enough? Because what you mentioned is that we need a whole new game in which whole food plant-based diet, which is not the same as eating not animals, right? Because you can eat really bad things for the environment and for your body eating vegan fast food. So how can we know that the whole world is going to say, oh, I'm vegan, and they're really eating whole food, plant-based vegan food? And at the same time, is thinking, is that enough? Because what I'm hearing is that that is not the whole game change. There's so much more, right? And this is what I really thought that it was going to be the core, which is stated like that, no? The 7 core shifts core is there, and it's the heart of the program. But I don't see yet how that clicks into what we're doing. In and outside of Basecamp Vegan World 2026, like we still believe that everything will change if we buy the plant-based milk, and that if we buy the pineapple artificial leather jacket, and we order our brand new car with fake leather seats, and that's it, no? And you're talking about a whole new game. And the sensitivity analysis is telling us, it doesn't matter if you buy all these things as a consumer, if the whole game is, and the infrastructure is not changed. So how can we have that in front of us the whole time as game changers in the vegan projects?
Yeah, I think the current situation in the economy is forcing a rethink of the game. Okay, we are now given an opportunity to create a new game and to deploy it so that people start playing that game. You know, because previously, you know, if I had done this like 6 months ago, people would say, yeah, I'll do it because out of goodness of my heart, I'll buy your thing. You know, but now so many people are going to be unemployed in the old system. And they are looking, I mean, it's their entire lives have been upended. Okay, and local governments are facing this because their lives are also upended. They cannot, I mean, their service requirements are increasing because they have to send all these ambulances to go pick up people and do all these things, and they have to maintain the roads, maintain, you know, provide the energy, the water and all that, but they don't have revenue coming in because there is no one buying with sales tax. Yeah? So the old model is crumbling, and we now have an opportunity to create a new model, right? In which you don't value, I mean, you don't even call yourself a consumer. You're past the caterpillar phase. Okay? The language has to change. So we don't have to identify ourselves as a consumer anymore. You're a giver. You are delivering food to senior citizens, whatever it is, right? So you are a different person altogether. And basic things are taken care of you by the community. The communities, you know, there are some people who are volunteering and going and growing food. Some people are going and doing, you know, so there are all these things that we need to do that are essential. And all the things that we were doing that were inessential has pretty much gone away. You know, there are companies now who are saying, yeah, you work from home. You work from home to build what? Who's buying it? Right? So it becomes a self-fulfilling, you know, the cocoon is forcing us to change, literally. In the past, I was saying, yeah, support the vegan movement, no matter even if it's like vegan consumerism, support the vegan movement because it forces the current system to think about what it's doing. To think about the foundation of it is violence to animals, violence to nature. That's the foundation of the current system. That's what the caterpillar was all about. That's why it was important to promote the vegan movement in that system also. But now that we are in the cocoon, we have to think differently. And this is what this whole conference and the summit is going to be about. The summit is for us to just talk to different experts about what this new situation is about and how can we live in the cocoon, and then trying to elicit collective intelligence in the process. So it's not just one person saying something and then going off. I want them all to come together and to then listen to the questions of the audience, the people who are listening, because I presume people would have watched all of those interviews and they would have their own perspective and they can come and ask questions. So this allows each one of us to develop our capabilities to make decisions on our own that are for the good of the whole. Okay, so that's the panel that's going to happen on April 18th. And then we are going to have deep dives into each segment of our lives with experts giving talks and then having a panel session afterwards where everyone then talks and asks questions. So that'll be one day at a time, once a week, we're going to do that. So we are planning this programming for the next 8 weeks or so that we all can pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and figure out how to be better participants in the cocoon.
All right, Miles has his hand up, followed by Melissa, and then I have a comment. So Miles, go for it.
Okay, thanks. So, just to go back to the suggestion that I had about saying to someone, you're about power with capitalism as opposed to power over capitalism, which is the paradigm we're living in now. It's power over. And in fact, if it's a power over situation, you're not a friend of that other person if you're wielding power over them. And I've got 2 books here written by an American woman, Cynthia Shapiro. What does somebody have to do to get a job around here? 44 insider secrets that will get you hired. And her other book, Corporate Confidential. She's an HR specialist. And she basically, these entire books are about how the current corporations typically, and HR, the human resources departments within them, are not your friend. So we need a power with economy, as Joanna Macy and Chris Johnson wrote about, a power with economy. And we need power with corporations to be created where they are the worker self-directed type enterprise of a more of a democratic or consensus organization. And we've got to move quickly. Sadly, Jeff Bezos and Amazon's making a killing right now. Everybody else is losing their shirts. So we need to get onto this quickly. And the reason I say just hold that power with capitalist is you can say to somebody, I'm a power with capitalist, because so many people out there are like, oh, these socialists are trying to take over and it's a communist plot to, usurp our freedoms. You hear that. There's YouTube channels dedicated to this, real right-wing blinders. And yet, there seems to be nothing wrong in the United States with having a socialized military that spends 9 times or is as much as the next 9 nations of NATO combined. You're all fine with that socialism. But healthcare, oh my gosh, a communist plot or something. So anyway, just keep that because if somebody says, oh, you're a socialist, you're a Marxist, you can say, no, I'm a capitalist. I'm a power with capitalist. And then the next thing just to mention is your slide, I agree with everything you have, but the veganism / radical equality, I would debate that, because there's not equality, unfortunately, and there never will be, because there are fundamental differences. And this is where we need to talk about the difference between the man brain and the womb man brain. We are, and there's a study by a San Diego professor of sociology, I think his name is David Shirk, Professor Shirk. He studied violence in Mexico. He's got a lot of information. And 90% of the violence is done by men, us men. So that's because we innately are stronger, we have more upper body strength, we throw farther, and we have a greater propensity to violence. So unfortunately, it actually needs men to educate men, because there is this inequality, and I'm afraid it always will be, but we have to, as men, educate ourselves. Thank you.
Right. I mean, ideally, you want to achieve radical equity, not beyond radical equality. But what I'm saying is that we can begin with an architecture that guarantees radical equality, and then through the community achieve radical equity. So it starts with an architecture that's fundamentally equal. So everyone can say they are treated the same. Okay, that's, you're not born with something bigger coming to you compared to someone else. No, everyone is starting with the same, and then radical equity is achieved, not just at the local level, but also at state level, at national levels, and how we organize ourselves. I really think Shelley Ostroff has a great idea that we need to be organizing ourselves around ecosystems, not around artificial boundaries. Right? So we live in a desert ecosystem of Southwest Desert. So we have a community for that, to figure out how to make this ecosystem flourish. So, and then we trade with others who are living in other ecosystems, so that they can help us with certain things we need, and we help them with certain things they need. So it's going to be a different way of organizing ourselves, but we have to transition to that from where we are. It's not going to be. So I really think we should be playing two games, multiple games. The game of money, that's based on the current model, which is slowly shrinking to nothing. Shrinking away. And then the other game will become bigger and bigger, right? So we start with that game. Initially, maybe for just local things that we use, because we are taking care of our neighbors who don't have anything in the old game, but who have something to offer in the new game. So they automatically get taken care of because they are offering in the new game, right? And so then over time, people become more and more comfortable with the new game. And then they say, well, the old game is shrinking anyway, so I'm not interested in it anymore. So then Jeff Bezos sits there with his trillion pieces of paper, and he says, oh, it's worth nothing, so I might as well join the new game. That's the way I want to see it happen. No violence, nothing. It has to be completely a compassionate, non-violent way of getting through this phase and getting into the butterfly.
Go ahead, Sudhir.
Yeah, a couple of things. So what I find interesting about, say, the writings of some of the authors I used to love and who really guided me through a phase of my life, when I look at them now, I'm like, oh, that doesn't work anymore. So I think we have to be careful about what we adopt from what we read as well, because things are changing and transforming very quickly now, and we're transitioning into a whole new modality, which is what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Rao, Sailesh. And then just to jump to another story that I heard, I don't remember who it was who talked about this. It was a scientist or a zoologist who was studying butterflies, and he was watching them go through their different stages from caterpillar to cocoon, and then the birthing process of coming out of the cocoon. And he saw this butterfly struggling, like there is pain involved with transitioning from one stage to the other. That's just a given. Giving birth always creates pain. And he wanted to help the butterfly avoid suffering. And so he opened the cocoon up, forced it open for the butterfly. And the irony is the butterfly died. It didn't make it, because there's something essential about that birthing process that we all have to go through, which will require suffering or pain of some sort. In order, I think when they're working their way out, it puts some kind of fluid, I believe, onto their wings that protects them. And then as they unfold naturally, then once those wings dry, they can take flight. And so I see that now we're cocooning, we're going in, and that cracking open, we will have to go through a letting go, which will be painful, but we will fly. How cool is that? I love this idea of us, taking flight into this new world and this new way of being, which we're exploring here. Thank you.
Beautiful.
I remember that Damon wanted to have a chance to say something, and can I go next after Damon?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in thinking about this new transition where we're all grounded, and the new economy is really going to be sort of this backyard economy, local forest economy, where we, work with Mother Nature so that she can produce for all of our needs. And then a lot of reuse and neighborliness and all that. And so I just really want to second Silas's point that this is all going to give birth to a new game. And we're just now groping with the new game as imaginal cells inside this gooey cocoon. We're just kind of groping around, connecting with each other, holding on to each other. And then we're, imagining where we're going to go next. And that for me is why collective superintelligence is so important, because as we make this transition, there's so much complexity to the transition. There's food stored here and here and here. There's potential for food to be produced here and here. There's a lot of sociopaths who I've come to know over the years who have invested in bunkers, and they're now burrowing underground with all kinds of food supplies and whatnot. And it's so crazy. And there's a lot of sociopaths who think that they can just ride it out and let all the poor people die. And then great, they'll have, that much more land and that much more of a world for themselves. And just as Franklin Delano Roosevelt proposed a New Deal, he came from the sociopath class and proposed a New Deal to his own class. Which gave birth to Social Security and so many social welfare programs and public works and whatnot. I envision a New Deal for all of humanity, because if we do not take care of all of humanity, just as we've seen with not taking care of Mother Nature reacts. If we don't take care of humanity, humanity is going to react, and we're going to see a lot more violence and terrorism and destruction. And so my view is we need to really come together as a collective superintelligence and become one. Jackie in the last session was talking about how we truly are one, and we're coming to know that, coming to realize that. And so in us coming together to think as one whole world, we can completely redesign the world in this new deal. That has nothing to do with money and everything to do with healing and life, and all of us making it through together. So I'm just super excited now that we're all settling down at home and learning that we have this resource of video conferencing and these other tools. Just So exciting. So I can't wait for us to just continue coming together and the lily pads continuing to connect. Let's give the microphone back to Silas for time he needs, and then Jorge will be next, and then Miles has his hand raised after Jorge. Go ahead, Silas.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was a guest speaker in 4 classes at ASU on Monday and Wednesday. And what I found was this format where I put it in gallery view, and then when I speak and I see the reactions of the students, I'm actually better able to gauge the reactions through this than I would in the classroom. In the classroom, I'm only looking at 1 or 2 people. Right here, I was seeing all of them. So I felt like I was really getting more out of it than I was getting in the classroom. Even though I know that, person to person, it's much better to be with each other than to be on a device like this. But with a group, it looks like this, at least to me, it worked better.
Beautiful. Well, I want to welcome Govinda, who's just joined us. Welcome, and we're just kind of open sharing here, so feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to share or ask a question or anything. Meanwhile, we've got Jorge in the queue. Jorge is up next, followed by Miles. Go ahead, Jorge.
Okay, so I also want to show a book, Miles. It is called The Conservation Revolution. And in one line, it says, our conceptualization of conviviality is necessarily post-capitalist and non-dualist. So I bring this up because you were mentioning that you want to be in power with economy, and at the end you were a capitalist. But the thing that we're seeing is that not being capitalist doesn't make us socialists, no? Like, we're talking about something that is transcending this, and we don't know the name, so we call it post-capitalism, because we don't know how it's going to look like. If it's going to be a monoculture of system, or it's going to be a polyculture of a system. And I wanted to just to bring some thoughts that I had about disengaging into supporting the vegan consumerism, because I wonder if I'm doing the right thing for the animal that is in the line to get into the slaughterhouse. Like, if I support this trend of, buy the vegan product and not the non-vegan product, am I reinforcing the commodity status and property of this animal that is going to be killed? And I wonder if the same would have happened. There's vegan organizations that compare what we're doing to animals to what happened to the Jewish community in World War II. So I put that exercise, this imagination exercise. If somebody would have said in 1945, hey, like, we are going to support this concentration camp that is now allowing the Jews to be free range and walk for a couple of hours. Oh yeah, they're doing it right. So like, sometimes we forget that we don't want to be speciesist, and we engage into these easy exits, okay, just for the time being. But yeah, that means the animal life. And this is when the Animal Liberation Front makes sense to me. Or what Captain Watson has done, Like, he's not waiting for the laws to change. He goes and sinks the whaler ship. And some people believe that is vandalism, but he's actually doing something to save the whales from being torpedoed and exploded with dynamite heads in their chests, no? So what is right? I don't know, but I'm in favor of life. So it is a tough choice what we're doing right now to say this is the higher road, no? How do we know? That we're not in the shoes of these beings that are being killed.
Does anyone, Govinda, you have a comment or with respect to Jorge's question? Oh, we can't hear you, Govinda. On the screen, your microphone is muted. I'm unmuting it. Okay, Govinda, your microphone is muted, and I don't know what to do about that. But I'll tell you what. Try now, Govinda. Okay. Meanwhile, Les, I think you raised your hand. You had something you wanted to follow up on what Jorge was saying. If you can, or you can finish chewing, that's fine. Okay, no problem. No problem.
I could follow up on what Jorge was saying about
Yeah.
how do we know whether we're doing the best for animals or not? We know. We always know whether we're harming or hurting something. We're not dead. If we look into ourselves and see how we hurt and harm ourselves, we're connected to everything through our genetics. And we all share the same genetics. So we basically all resonate, and we share many of the same genetics with other animals. So I'm not, it's not to say that everybody's going to start meditating tomorrow, but I'm saying for those of us that are going to lead this transformation, I think we all need to be really well in touch with who we are inside. If we're going to pretend to know ourselves and know how we come across to other beings. But we feel it. You always feel it when something is being hurt or when something's being helped. And then with all the knowledge we have and studying patterns when the shift is occurring and constantly getting feedback, we can adjust as we go along. I just see that it is possible, and I don't think it's just a blind shot. And how do we know whether we're making good or not? I think we're way more than that. I think we have way more that can register in us and reflect than just a blind shot into it. And I understand why you say that, but I definitely have a different way of looking at it that tells me that we have a lot working for us to head in the right direction.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's see, Govinda. Hey, yeah, try.
I got it to work, I believe.
Good. Thanks, Govinda.
Hi, my name is Govinda. I got something sort of related. It's mostly a TED talk on beavers, but I think it relates because a lot of people view human beings like, oh, we're the only beings that change our environment and adapt to, and like that's not true, right? Like beavers make dams, ants like will literally carry seeds to other places. Like there's all kinds of things in nature where different species on our earth modify and change the environment for their own needs. Like the beavers specifically are like the keystone species of all of the United States. The reason why the United States is so good, all the famed bottomland that we all farmed out was all created by beaver dams, like sites that were deposited and left and come back later. So I think we often forget that human beings ourselves, we say being species, but we are a species. And we forget our goal in the environment. Like for example, like we talk about killing whales, but you wouldn't really necessarily dig on like indigenous people in Alaska or South America who traditionally hunted whales because they did it in a sustainable way, and they did it in a way that was at one for nature. Also, you couldn't just go out and kill a bunch of whales because you're just like a group of people. We didn't have torpedoes. We didn't have dynamite. We didn't have these big ships to go out in the middle of nowhere. So I think a lot of it comes down to like, how can we complement nature? I think beavers are a really cool example because I'd say I'm new to this mostly because of my age, not so much of like I haven't been doing it that long. I've been doing this kind of stuff since I was very little. I'm outside right now, actually. So I've been pulling all my knowledge together, and one of the coolest things that I've looked into is the Chiampas in Mexico, and how those raised, they're basically like, if any of you don't know, I'm sure many of you do, they're like raised bed in water, right? And it doesn't require any irrigation, doesn't require, like, that's why Mexico and the Aztecs were so powerful, because they produced so much food through like these Chiampa systems that were otherwise perfect. Is very similar to the raised beds that many people in permaculture do, where you build the posts, but instead they built it in the water, and it would grow out and it would become islands, and eventually it all became Mexico City. I think there's ways we can do it now, working with nature, to be incredibly productive. In the back of my property, there's like this huge spring we have that's slowly been colonized by these beavers. And especially now, because of the whole coronavirus thing, and I haven't been to work in 2 weeks, and I'm going crazy, the beavers have just totally gone at it. And it's crazy, because they like the Bradford pears, they like the mimosas, they like all the invasive trees because they're a little softer than like the oaks and everything, and they've been tearing them down and making their ponds out of it. And so there's these huge ponds where we've never seen such diversity, like, ever before, like in our neighborhood. Like, they tried to dig for oil and it never seemed to recover. But now, like, these beavers have come in and completely redefined the landscape. So I think it would be really interesting that, like, we can implement these systems with nature. Like, I've got a bunch of raised beds that I've been mixing with native plants, and it's been really effective, because the pests and like the rabbits and all the things out there that want to eat the food, they much rather eat like the cowpeas and stuff that from outside than just like cabbage and lettuce, and whatever perennial I'm going to grow. So I think there's nothing stopping like a group of people from literally, like, people try to get, I live in Texas, and people try to get rid of beavers all the time. They kill them, they trap them, they don't want to have anything to do with them because they destroy their ponds or whatever. But if you let a beaver go to work on a bottomland, slowly it becomes a pond, and then you get more biodiversity. And through that, we can work with the pond, and we can work with the beaver, and we can work with nature. And then so you can literally have these Chiampa systems out in the pond that the beaver creates. And you can mess with the bed. You can do rotations like you would with anybody else, any other kind of permaculture. And then you have a system where the beavers themselves are doing all the work, right? They're making the ponds. You're just putting in a bunch of posts. You might be introducing some like native fish into the ecosystem to, like, you could work it as an aquaponic system and an agricultural system. And it's, by definition, it is the most efficient system you could have, because you have water, you have plants, you could even theoretically eat the beavers. You shouldn't eat the beavers. I'm going to say no, but theoretically, if you were like an emergency situation, like, they are historically something that Native Americans and even old trappers here used to eat. So there's this really complete system, like a totally complete system that's just there. We could do this at any time. Like, our government could just reintroduce beavers without all the agriculture, and we could basically save everything. I'm not saying beavers are the solution to everything, but I really like beavers, and they are like the most important part of North America. I'm not sure everybody here lives in North America, but they're really important in Europe too, but they got rid of all of them. That's when there's ecological collapse is something we're going to need to prevent. And we're going to need systems that are going to incorporate not only our own needs, but also the needs of the environment around us.
Yeah, completely agree with you. In fact, the story we tell at Climate Healers also makes us part of the whole system. Human beings are part of nature too. And that we have been, we are basically climate regulator species for the planet. And we've done a pretty good job of maintaining the temperature so that the Earth does not go back to another ice age in the current interglacial period. And now we have been called to become, a butterfly species from the caterpillar that we were. So we're going through the cocoon now. And so it's basically storytelling. How do you tell a story in which you do belong exactly as you are? You don't have to tell yourself that you are a really bad mistake that nature made and you have to just off yourself, So that's not the story that we want to tell. Anyway, I have to get going. Thank you all very, very much.
Silas, thank you so much. You are such a highlight of the Collective Intelligence Block Party. That
Yay.
we love you so much. Thank you, Silas, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Silas, just one thing before you go. The Haida call us the Dee-Dak-Do people, which means the butterfly people.
Ah,
Dee-Dak-Do. Dee-Dak-Do. Isn't that great?
awesome.
Thank you, Silas.
Bye.
Awesome.
All right, and everyone, please stick around. We've got a exciting agenda here at the 24-hour Collective Intelligence Block Party. And after this last 2-hour segment, I say we take a few minute break. Any suggestions?